Stareable Fest 2021 is a 4-day celebration of innovation in independent streaming series. We're a creator convention, bringing you the most relevant production workshops, panel discussions, giveaways, and an industry marketplace connecting the next wave of indie series to execs at AMC Networks, Blumhouse, Disney TV Animation, and more. We're a festival, screening your new faves, from rich fantasy to absurdist comedy, hosting an award ceremony, and several parties to kick it with your fellow fans and creators alike.
If you call me if you call
Hello and welcome to today's conversation, Building Fandom, Zombie Orpheus' lesson on creating rabid fan engagement. Stareable Fest is the premier annual indie TV and web series festival in the US and the new home for digital creative talent in the TV industry. They honor the year's best content and provide a space for the next generation of creators to connect with industry executives, grow their network, learn new skills, and build community. Stareable Fest is presented by Dell Technologies with NVIDIA, making workstation and monitor solutions purpose-built for creators like you. We'd also like to thank our other sponsors and partners, AMC Networks, Disney TV Animation, Rizzle, and Just for Laughs for making Stareable Fest 2021 possible. I'll be your moderator. My name is Abie. I'm an actress, singer, screenwriter, and producer living in Seattle, Washington. Currently, I'm in Whidbey Island, Washington, at a theater production called The Revolutionists, which plays until October 23rd. I have an extensive resume with professional IMDb credits for over 10 years. I also graduated from Montclair State University with a computer science degree and minored in musical theater and toured with the Seton Hall University Choir along the entire East Coast in Quebec, Canada. I later found my passion in film with Grimm, Man in the High Castle Librarians, Portlandia, and even Z Nation, which was filmed in Spokane. I also got a chance to be in this upcoming ElfQuest movie as the voice of Audrey. My production company, Babs Eck Productions, promotes diversity and inclusivity in my local community. Now, I'd love to welcome my colleague, friend, and creative partner, Ben. Ben is a co-founder of Zombie Orpheus Entertainment and the Fantasy Network. They are also the creator of Strowlers and The Gamers, the series. As CEO of Zombie Orpheus, they oversaw the business and creative development of dozens of independent television series and feature films, crowdfunding millions of dollars for productions around the world. They stepped down from management this year and are currently producing the ultimate Dungeon Showdown game and television series, as well as developing a YA graphic novel and funding ElfQuest, the audio movie. And here, with my honor, I will introduce you to Ben.
All right. Thank you, Abie. So great to be here again. I attended Stareable in person a few years ago. I know it's not the same virtually, but it's just such an incredible community, and it's a real privilege to present today. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in because we have a lot of cool stuff to cover as we talk about building your fandom, sustaining fan engagement. And for us, fan engagement starts with kind of asking the core question, what do fans want? And then reverse engineering that in order to generate the kind of engagement that can drive, a decade of production. So fans want to show their love for a property. They want to take action. They want to be involved, and they want the action that they take to matter. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. They want to be accepted and validated, not only within the fan community, but by the creators whose work they love. And then they want to share that experience of validation and creation and mattering with the other fans. So by giving fans what they want, we're able to create a sustainable funding and production cycle. And I always forget to do this. I was finally reminded to talk a little bit about the results of our plan. That's kind of the social proof. So for the last 11 years, we were founded in 2010. Zombie Orpheus has created 10 seasons of television. That's 96 episodes, 4 features. We've published 11 books. We've staged 4 fan conventions. We have an ongoing webcomic. We have 3 different weekly live streams. And of course, we co-founded the Fantasy Network, a fan and community-owned streaming platform. And what's amazing about this amount of production is that it has all been funded by the fans. Now, the conventional wisdom we kind of had to throw out in order to make our model succeed and to engage the fans in the way that we wanted. But it's worth kind of talking about how we're told to do things, which is make the show and then sell it afterward. And when that's the case, when you make it and then sell it, you have to protect your content at any cost. You need every metric possible, and you've got to aim for the mass market. You need to get enough views on whether it's on advertising or Amazon Prime doing payouts or a single shot Netflix deal or whatever the case might be. You've got to bring in enough money after making it to make the show, and you can't give anything away. And that's really hard to do on the internet. And the other piece of conventional wisdom that we kind of had to turn upside down is this notion that free content destroys value. Now, we've all learned a lot since 2010, and that's not as much of the narrative anymore. But even so, like I was at a convention a few weeks ago, a festival, and heard someone talking about how you can't put quality content on YouTube and succeed because you need so many millions of views for the ad revenue to keep up with your permanent production costs. I think that there are certainly cases where this works, but by understanding what fans' needs are, it's possible to work around that. Now, the other challenge that we face is the attention lottery. There are so many shows being made right now. There's too much to watch, and it's impossible to watch everything now, even within specific genres. This is actually an opportunity because what we've seen with the fragmentation of mass media is that there's more opportunity than ever to find the shows that are made for you, to find the shows and the stories that an audience can't find anywhere else. An example I love to give, whoever makes a show for the online knitting community, the global knitting community, is going to have a hit on their hands, because no one has really spoken to that community with a show that represents them. So we combat the content deluge by speaking to specific audiences and identities and understanding them. And that's such a key part of engaging a fan base. So with that in mind, Zoe's model works in 3 pieces. First of all, we create abundance, and I'll dive into this. Generosity inspires generosity. Secondly, a total focus on telling your story and the idea that representation is a superpower. And then number 3, empowering that fandom and the impact that the fans want to make. So an abundance economy probably sounds strange compared to how things have traditionally been done. Because of course, the film industry, the music industry, the entertainment industry all emerged out of physical distribution scarcity models. How many film prints can we afford? How can we ship them? How many VHS tapes can be made? How many DVDs can be made? The internet, however, turned those physical limitations upside down, because the internet is a machine that can make perfect, infinite copies of your work at no cost to you. And that was a huge threat to the entertainment industry. We've seen so many digital rights management schemes, which eventually started working. Piracy has gone way down since it became easy to watch protected content. But at the same time, there's still this model that content must be protected, that it has to be put in a silo, because otherwise you'll face the worst thing ever, which is piracy, someone stealing your work. And what we had to do was also turn that notion of piracy on its head, because piracy isn't the enemy. Obscurity is the enemy. And instead of trying to protect our work, we said we are going to give it away for free. We are going to encourage people to share it, to pirate it, to remix it, because the product that we're selling, we're no longer selling units. We're building a sustaining fan community. And that sustaining fan community, the product that they're buying is the future. That's our best-selling product, and you cannot pirate the future. So with that shift in perspective, we're no longer worried about protecting it. Free is an advantage. And then that makes it even easier to empower the fans to say, take it, share it, remix it. Where they feel trusted, they feel needed, and people want to support what they love. I know this sounds wild, but it's an entire model that depends on the generosity of strangers on the internet. And surprisingly, there are a lot of really good people out there. And we'll talk later about how to kind of filter out the people who try to undercut those models. I swear I turned this phone off like 15 times. Okay. The second piece of this is the idea that your story matters. So I was at a television festival a few weeks ago, and one of the things that I experienced, I watched, both with that festival and with all the content at Stareable, I've just been gobsmacked by the quality of the storytelling and the unique visions. But what made me sad in hearing people talking about their shows at that festival was this constant refrain of, and I hope if I sell it that I'll be able to be involved. I know we'll have to reshoot it. I know we'll have to redevelop it. Hopefully some of my vision will make it through. If I'm lucky, maybe I'll get to be a part of that process. And when I heard people talking in panels and in casual conversations about this notion of it's not possible to make your art and to express your vision and to succeed unless you get incredibly lucky. But the thing is, your perspective is unique in the universe. That's not my quote, but it's so crucial to remember that no one else sees things the way that you do. But there are people out there who are going to see things similarly to how you do. And finding those people is how you managed to bridge expression and kind of the financial success that gives you sustainability to keep telling your stories. And then the third piece of this is building that sustaining community. It's really easy to watch a show. It's harder to turn a passive viewer on a platform like Amazon or Netflix into an active, empowered fan. And it's crucial to have a call to action that puts the future, and remember, the future is what we are selling because it can't be pirated. We want to put the future into their hands and let them know it and have the courage to make the big ask. I do a ton of crowdfunding consulting, and people are always afraid to say, I need money, I need resources, I need help to do this. But if you can't bridge that gap, if you can't look at the camera and say, this show is supported by the fans, this show is only possible with your support, and we'd love to ask you for your help now within the next 30 days to make it possible, you'll find that people will respond. And you have to let them know, though. You can't just spring it on them. It has to be a part of the culture that you build for your community from the beginning, this notion of collective action for a common goal, and then being transparent about your goals and accountable about your goals. The other piece of maintaining a fandom we've learned this lesson the hard way through Gamergate and through so many other issues over the years, you have to maintain a healthy fandom. If you just sit back and passively let people interact on social media, you will get what social media creates. Facebook is a machine that is designed to generate engagement, and as we've seen with the recent revelations from internal document leaks, the easiest way to create that engagement is through toxicity and outrage. The default culture that platforms create is a recipe for abuse, harassment, and negativity. And that means not being passively letting your audience turn into that, but actively creating values and modeling the kind of support that you want from the fans by offering it to the fans. Because we want to create this abundance economy. We want to create and nurture fan desire to give back. So it's essential, if you're going to build that rabid fan community, to have a safe space policy. You've got to stand up for the most vulnerable members of your fan community, because otherwise the loudest and often the most toxic voices will create the culture, and they will push people away. You also have to be ready to say that human rights are not a debate. And that people will come in and they will want to both sides questions of whether trans people deserve to exist, or whether women deserve equal rights, or on and on and on down the list. It's a derailing tactic that's meant and intended to introduce and normalize harm to marginalized groups. So we don't allow debate about whether people deserve to exist. And then from a very practical standpoint, trolls are cheapskates. Now, every time that we've stood up for marginalized members of our community, we've had people rage quit. And they often rage quit with the quote, "Get woke, go broke." This is an empty threat from empty people, because fandoms win when trolls leave a community. And what we've learned, I went in a couple of years ago and I assessed all of our data and looked at the people who had left because of debates over being a space for marginalized fans. Trolls are cheapskates. The loudest, most toxic voices don't share our core value of collective action for a common goal. An average pledge from our fandom overall is around $100 for a crowdfunding campaign. Average pledge from the trolls was around $10. It's okay to let them go. And that will give you a healthier, more sustaining community. You've got to put the work in then, however. So let's put all of this into practice now with a case study for Journeyquest. Since 2010, we have funded 4.5 seasons of the show. We've had millions of views. We started on YouTube. We were on Hulu. We've been on Seed and Spark. We've been on Amazon Prime. We've been on a number of other platforms. And the entire show has been made possible by that essential fan support. So how do we do it? Step number one is, unlike trying to sell a widget on Kickstarter, where you can just say, here's this pin, it's mechanical, it has some awesome electronics in it, it will change your life, here's a breakdown. A show is more subjective, and it's hard to fall in love with something that doesn't exist. So the first part of our strategy with Journeyquest was, we said, we know we have this script that we love, we believe in this, we need to produce it, and we need to get it out there. And that's a combination of time and labor and money. And whatever it takes to make your show, there's not really a way around having to prove that it's something worth supporting. People have got to have that opportunity to connect with the characters, to connect with the story, to connect with a unique voice. And those are more important if you're going to the fandom than having ideal, perfect production values. The first hit we had, The Gamers in 2002, we did as a side project with a consumer camera for $500 over a series of weekends, and it became a viral hit on the internet long before YouTube, and we were selling VHS tapes out of our garage. But it worked because it spoke to people's identities. They felt represented in a way they hadn't before. And they loved the characters, they loved the story, it made them laugh, and it felt authentic. So get it produced. And then the next step with Journeyquest, once we had our first season in the can and edited, was to begin promoting it. And that's hard to do without other people. You have to find your allies who have similar audiences and build organic, authentic relationships with them. One of the things that I always do when we're targeting a new audience, I'll join a ton of the big groups 6 to 9 months before I ever plan on talking about the show, and actually just put in the time to be an involved, authentic member who is happy to be there. Creating the relationships, creating the trust, learning the culture of that place, so that when it comes time to talk about your show, you're not just stepping in as a stranger and saying this, you're already a member of the community. And people already have an emotional investment in what you're bringing. There's no way around doing that. And you can find those partnerships with Facebook groups, with pages, on Reddit, if that's your platform. One thing we did for Journeyquest, we reached out to another production company, Dead Gentleman Productions, who had a very similar fandom. And we asked them to come on board as co-producers. They got more content, and then it was much easier for us to introduce the show to their audience. So you go through fund, produce, promote. This is all pretty standard. Here's where it deviates from what many other people do. And Cory Doctorow calls this the dandelion model. When you blow a dandelion and its seeds go out into the air and waft away, there's no way to track where they're going to go. You don't know where they're going to land. But the thing about weeds, yes, I'm calling your show a weed. I'm calling my show a weed. The thing about weeds is that they spread everywhere and they take root in places that you could never predict. And it's part of why, even if our show is on the Pirate Bay, if it's being torrented, if it's being streamed on some suspect Russian site, we're going to find our audience there because the show is its own best advertisement. You'll get an idea of it from the trailer, but the best way to experience it is to experience it. And then to bake in the call to action wherever people discover it so the seed can take root. If 100 people watch the show, pirate the show, out of 100 people who pirate the show, one person becomes a core fan who is, and this has literally happened to us, dropping a couple $1,000s on every crowdfunding campaign we do. It's more than made up for any piracy that we experienced. Give it away, make it as easy as possible to discover and watch without distractions. And that has changed over the years. We started on YouTube. We now will do a premium release on the Fantasy Network, and then we'll release on Amazon often, and then we'll go wide. But we also know it's going to be pirated immediately, and that call to action is baked in everywhere, so people are going to be able to do it. So we're now using that call to action to bring people in and to tell them it's up to you. Our call to action has also evolved over the years, but it originally came out of looking at the period from 2000 to 2010 when there were consistent ongoing fan efforts to save incomplete shows and to get the rest of the story told. Veronica Mars, Farscape, Jericho, Firefly. And we looked at all the energy that people were putting in, like sending Mars bars to the networks who just didn't care. This has changed some since then as people have become aware of the power of fandom. And said, what if we harnessed that power and empowered the fans? We said, you can use that energy and keep the show alive. So each of our shows began with a little tag that said, no studio, no network, no cancellation. This show is crowdfunded and renewed by viewers like you. It doesn't sound like much, but it's targeted so specifically to that experience of the audience that they then turned around and we were figuring maybe 6 months after releasing Journeyquest, we'd start to ask for money. People saw that message, they got the message, and were emailing us on the day the show released saying, how do we throw money at you? Here's an example of how the messages changed over the years. Your studio, your network, your stories. And then that fan-supported creator-distributed logo, which, by the way, is available for free for anyone to use. Take it, steal it, run with it. It's a good, quick way to show people who are familiar with this model that they can turn around and support your show. And whatever your audience wants, you've got to understand them well enough and their experience well enough to give them that empowerment and engagement they're asking for. So you get your show out there, you get your audience involved, And then you come to the moment of truth, the audience response. How many people are going to watch it? How many people are into it? And it's likely that the first, second, third, fourth attempt may not hit the numbers that you need to continue. And that's also normal. If you go and look at some of the biggest TikTok stars and take a look at their first few months of content. And what you'll often see is that the content is all over the place. It's a shot in the dark, an experiment, another experiment, a quick pivot, trying to find the thing that works. And once you find what works, you can then build on that and innovate on that. But hitting it the first time out of the gate isn't as likely. That's also why it's so important not to put all of your eggs, in your financial eggs, into that first one production basket, hoping that this one lottery ticket is going to make it through. But even if a show doesn't hit the numbers that you need, it's important to recognize that whatever audience you find, no matter how small they are now people who are emotionally invested in your success and your stories. And so engaging with them is going to pay so many dividends, because some of them are going to become the long-term core fans who are going to provide the social proof and the evangelism and the excitement that brings other people in as you continue to produce. So look at your numbers, and you then make the crucial decision: do I start over or do I continue? And even if it's game over for one show, make the next thing, keep growing, keep learning your audience. In the case of Journeyquest, it clicked with the audience and they loved it, and we were able to hit that continue button. And that moved us into the next stage of the project cycle, which looks fairly similar with one key difference. This time around, we're going to crowdfund. We've engaged the audience, we've provided them with something, and we've said the story can only continue with your support. And that even lets them kind of make the last step. And in the case of Journeyquest, we had them begging for us to take the show to Kickstarter. Give us a chance to promote it. And we'll talk more about crowdfunding in a minute. But you crowdfund the show, produce the show, promote the show, and go through that process. This is backwards compared to how it's often done, because you've paid for your show before you've produced it. When you're getting ready to release it at this point, you don't have an investor to pay off. You don't have debt to pay off. It's ready to go. It's free. So if you can get over that first hump of creating something that people want, you can then create an ongoing cycle of that dandelion release, call to action, give it away, and get people buying into the next show and building on that success. So let's talk about crowdfunding. It's way more accepted than it used to be, but especially in the independent television industry. And as we're talking about wanting, and if we're aiming for selling a show to a network or getting a deal picked up or whatever else, there are a lot of negative narratives around it. People saying if you crowdfund, you won't be able to sell your show, or Hollywood won't take you seriously, or it's not real film on television, it's just fan film and we ignore fan film. Or it's too much work for too little reward, or crowdfunding is low quality, it's probably a scam, it's only for niche audiences. And my favorite, which I hear from distributors all the time, well, if you fulfill all the things you promised, then they won't buy the show and it'll kill our retail sales and distribution. Here's the deal about that, though. If the distributor's plan is to sell the show to the audience who you already have, you don't need them, because your audience is already going to buy it. The distributor should be taking you to new audiences, and they need to understand, if you want to go that route, that rewarding and taking care of and nurturing your rabid, sustaining fan community is going to benefit things. Even if they don't want to buy it again, and some certainly will, they're going to be out there evangelizing for it. But in any case, these negative narratives are real. You'll encounter them. And they are real consequences that come with crowdfunding. And so you have to think about, with each stage of this process of building your audience, is your goal to break into the industry? Is your goal to tell your story? Is there a way to thread the needle between both of them? And to be aware of the consequences with that. The advantage of crowdfunding is that it is independence. And it's kind of awesome. Crowdfunding is collective action for a common good at your speed. So what's impossible for one person to do is achievable for the crowd. And I cannot overemphasize how amazing it is watching an audience go from thinking that a goal is impossible to realizing what they accomplished together and what more they can do. And that's kind of at the heart of what we do, is empowering people to pursue those common goals, whether it's making a film or supporting a community member who's lost their home or whatever else. Here's what we can do when we can work together. And that's where that common good element comes in. We want to tell a story. We want to support a member of the community. Building something that pleases the community is rewarding and sustaining. And then at your speed. And this is important because life is short and there are thousands of stories to tell. It can take 5 years to make one 90-minute independent film the traditional way. And that may be what's right for you, but you may also want to make a lot more. Why wait for an executive or financier to take a chance on you? You can continue pursuing that, but also be making the content and telling the stories and building the audience. Stories don't have to be precious. Make one, make another, make another, make another, give them away. And with crowdfunding, you have that privilege of pleasing yourself and your audience, not trying to please a studio executive. One of the notes I received pitching once was, okay, this is great. I'm really into this, but your show needs a white male character as point of view character so that the audience can understand what's going on. Like, this executive could not imagine a show that didn't have a white male interpreter because the audience was only the executive was only thinking of the audience as the target audience. The target audience is white men. Crowdfunding lets you skip that. It lets you forget 4-quadrant models. It lets you take a chance on new, unique stories for your audience. And kind of the corollary to that is this question of, wow, this sounds like a lot of work, and crowdfunding is a lot of work, and production is a lot of work. But the truth is, the entire television industry is a lot of work. It's exhausting. It requires work to succeed. It's also, and I have to say, we're huge union proponents, and I'm very much hoping that the upcoming and very likely IATSE strike leads to better working conditions for everyone. Because it's very difficult to sustain a life in film and television when your boss only lets you leave work for 8 hours a day. In any case, whether you have a boss or you're doing it on your own, whether you're pursuing crowdfunding models or trying to pitch your show, unless you have millions of dollars behind you and you get really, really lucky, you're probably not going to win that easy path lottery. You're going to have to do the work either way. So think about, what kind of work do you want to do, and what are your goals moving forward? So reviewing the model, tell your story, empower your fans, and give it away. And just to review, giving everything away for the last 11 years, 10 TV seasons, 4 features, 11 books, 4 conventions, webcomic, the live streamings, the streaming network. It's amazing to look back and realize that over 16,000 unique backers have consistently stepped forward to make that kind of storytelling possible. And in a way that has been life-changing, I think, for us and for them. Now, there's one more piece to what we do at Zombie Orpheus that helps drive that fan engagement even higher. I don't recommend this to everyone. In fact, I hardly recommend it to anyone. But if you never want to sell your show, if you want to make sure that the networks or the studios will not take you seriously and will not be able to acquire your product, you can super give it away. So with Journeyquest, we started off under a Creative Commons model where we said, you can take it, you can share it, you can create fan art and derivatives. We have some of the fan art up on the screen that's been made. People have made animations. Someone just put together a role-playing game and crowdfunded it. We started with the Creative Commons model from the beginning, and that was our way of showing our audience we are serious about empowering you and giving this to you. And if you're going to fund it, we're going to make sure that you have the access to play with it. Because remember, fans want to be involved. And a lot of this is about fantasizing as well. 98% of your fans will only fantasize about what they could do and how they would remix your property, because life is hard. We don't have the time to do all the things that we want to do. 2% of them are going to turn around and create amazing stuff. We eventually moved from Creative Commons to the Shared Cinematic Universe License Agreement, available online at scu.la, the Skoola. This is available for free for anyone who wants to use it. And we developed this because the Creative Commons agreement, we had a number of conversations with SAG-AFTRA, and we just could not find a way to make what we wanted to do with Creative Commons compatible with the needs of the unions. So we developed our own agreement that is union compatible, and that takes the same kind of logic about piracy and applies it to sharing. So the Skoola says share alike, provide attribution, but you can sell whatever you want. Make your commercial derivatives, just take it out there, literally steal our work, repackage it, and sell it. It's cool. Because what we're offering and what can't be pirated is the thing that fans want the most, which is for, let's say I create a piece of fan fiction. I want that fan fiction to become a part of the official story. And the only way to make it canon is to follow the terms in the agreement and then to ask us to review it and to provide it with official canon recognition. That can't be pirated. If someone says something's canon and we say it isn't, the fans are going to believe us. And that has resulted in just this outpouring of incredible fan product, fan support. And when we're done telling the story of Journeyquest, it will essentially belong to the fans as much to us, and they will be able to continue the story in whatever ways they want. So we've released Journeyquest, The Gamers, Strowlers, and Demon Hunters under this license, and various third-party shows have begun releasing under it as well. Now, all of this is, I said this at the beginning, but I want to reiterate. If there's something in this presentation that works for you, that gives you an aha moment to say, here's how I want to engage my fans, I'm inspired, take what works, throw out the rest. It's never all or nothing. As much as we have shows that we know will never get picked up by a network, it's also fun to pitch and develop shows with networks and to go to streamers and try to put things together. But why not keep making your own shows while you're trying to get those deals? And here's another thing. At Stareable, I've been watching the amazing shows that creators have made. At the other festival a few weeks ago, was sitting in on script readings, was watching these incredible pilots, and had this moment of just intense sadness because so many of the pilots and shows that I were watching were never going to make it to the public because the goal was to sell it or redevelop it. And give yourself permission when you are done with the pitch process to share your work with the public and to find an audience. Let people fall in love with it, even if that particular piece is going to go nowhere. Because that's finding the people who appreciate your voice and your vision. Giving up after pitch, festival. Everyone says never put it out there for free. Sometimes it's better to let people experience your vision rather than just shelving it. Number 2, you know what's best for you. The key point is creating a shared culture of empowered fans. And also that crowd sourcing doesn't have to mean crowdfunding. Even if you don't want to go out there and get people to give you money for your show, you can still let your fans engage in collective action to talk about you on social media, to boost your work, there are so many ways. The crowd is almost always smarter than an individual. The most successful things that we've done as a company weren't our ideas. they were because out of thousands of fans, someone raised their hand and said, hey, what if you did this? And we realized, wow, that's brilliant. So rely on the wisdom of your crowds. Let your fans, as you build them, provide ideas. Not all of them will be good, but the ones that are, that you never would have thought of, are a gift. And that's a gift that the fans give back to you in exchange for the gift that you've given them of authentic stories that matter. So with that, I'm very excited to invite Abie back and to invite you to a Q&A.
Hi, Ben.
Hello.
Thank you so much for that amazing presentation. Thank you, everyone, for spending the time to listen. We have about 15 minutes to take some questions from the audience. If you have a question and would like to come up on stage, just raise your hand. And if you just like to submit a question on screen, just type it where you see your question mark. And we'll just wait.
Yeah. While we're waiting for questions,
Sure.
Abie, I'd kind of love to hear from you just about your process of getting involved and how the Zoe model has kind of affected your desire to be involved with this project.
Well, so right before, I've known Zoe obviously for a while. I mean, I watched Standard Action and Journeyquest when I was younger, not that much younger though. But it was one of those things that I loved. I loved the character of Karn. Seeing this fantasy world where BIPOC people were involved, and just to give some meaning to, my young age of playing D&D or Magic the Gathering or anything like that, or just regular tabletop games. And so I had just come off of a really bad relationship with another production where I gave them a crap ton of my ideas for world building and didn't get any credit for it whatsoever. And I did not know that was how most productions worked. And learned that was absolutely not the case when my dear friend Sater invited me to be on the story team for Strowlers. And then realizing that it was another Zombie Orpheus thing, I was like, hell yeah! I'd absolutely 100% want to be involved in this, especially having diverse voices onto the story team. It was very important for me, and in my ideals of thinking that there are other productions that are out there that are not crooked or trying to steal people's ideas or wherever that comes from. So yeah, I was really happy to be a part of the team, and then just grow that relationship from there, and had actually been able to help get some stories available ready myself, and got into screenwriting literally because of that. So I thank you very, very much. And I've also gotten a chance to meet some amazing producers who have been a part of the Fantasy Network, and being on the board of the Fantasy Network, it's given me a chance to see so many other independent artists, creatives, filmmakers who are out there besides what we're trying to do in Washington State. It's amazing to see so many other different inclusive films being produced independently, completely opposite of the world of Hollywood and the ideal of Hollywood. So I'm very excited to see what other future projects come out.
Yeah, I think part of what so the Fantasy Network kind of evolved accidentally. We started off just with Zoe saying, let's provide a streaming library to our Patreon supporters. And then we started chatting with Aerostorm at the Forge and added their content. And then other creators around the world started saying, we like what you're doing. How can we get involved? And so that is now, like Stareable, both companies did an equity crowdfunding campaign to help make it owned by the community. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that a company can do is to make it a community endeavor in every way. And it's been amazing kind of watching other Fantasy Network creators adopt the parts of these models that work for them and then be able to get their shows funded. Yeah, again, if any other questions come up, fantastic. I think I want to share.
Yeah, we have a question too.
What?
We have a question.
Oh, where is it?
Hannah.
I don't see it.
So we have a question from Hannah and Rachel Mangan. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Hi, Hannah and Rachel.
Ben mentioned joining a community months before planning to share their work. How do they approach time management when social media and community engagement can be so time consuming? Such a good question.
All right. Well, you've convinced. I just started to solve this in the last 2 weeks after the last 11 years, thanks to my new therapist. I now have an ADHD notebook that I use and a kind of whole system of time tracking. So I would say understand your brain and then find the resources that have been built for how your brain works. To the ADHD thing, what I constantly face is time blindness. When I'm excited about a task, it seems like it will take no time at all. And then when I'm not excited, it turns out it takes a lot more time. So understanding how much time things take, breaking it down, having a plan. Get therapy, understand your brain.
Yes.
Use the right tools.
Yeah.
Don't be like me, where I tried to do 20 things at once and got really tired.
I think the wonderful thing that I love that has happened since working with you is learning how to have a calendar, learning how to schedule posts, right? Like you schedule posts, like if they're Facebook or Instagram or whatever like that, there's like apps that you can use to schedule social media stuff. Definitely have understand your brain. And the therapist, I can't tell you how much.
And also eventually when you can get help. This is going to sound horrifying, but like the first 4 or 5 years of Zoe, I read every social media comment. I read every YouTube comment. I read every Twitter reply, which was invaluable for learning where the fandom was. But it'll reach a point where it's just not feasible anymore, and we had to hire someone to take that on. But there's real value in doing that kind of engagement, because that active engagement, even if it's taking up a lot of time, that's building those core relationships. And it's helping you understand your audience and what their needs are. Like if we weren't listening to our audience at Zoe, and there were times where we didn't and got into trouble, we would have ended up with a very toxic fan base. Like there was an occasion a few years ago. We had all of our films on GOG.com.
Yes.
And their social media person with GOG and their owner started posting kind of pretty anti-trans comments on social. And so we reached out privately and said, this isn't cool. What are you going to do about it? Or and we were making a lot of money there. We'll have to pull our content. They essentially said, we're not going to change anything. We're fine with it. So we sent them a letter. We publicly withdrew. And, once again, had the Go Woke, Get Broke Brigade coming after us on social, and people rage quitting because we said that trans people are people too. Tough. Our audience, but we wouldn't have known to do that if our audience hadn't felt safe talking about these issues and educating us about these issues. Mm-hmm. So that I can't overemphasize how important that kind of ongoing engagement and listening is.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
We do. We have more. Yeah.
Okay.
From Yasmin Ikoka, were there any productions that didn't make the production floor? How were they shared with the public?
Yep.
Which I think is a really good question also.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the strangest ones, one of our Gamers spinoffs, the Gamers Natural One, we actually tried, there were 3 attempts to crowdfund a sequel, and all 3 failed. And, we thought the numbers were there, and we just finally had to say, not enough of our audience is into this. We've got to let it go. We made a feature film called Attack in the Darkness that I think is one of the best things we ever made. I'm incredibly proud of it.
Yes.
That we just didn't find its audience. And I still hold out hope that someday it will take off, because I think it's still relevant. But there's always, you never know how much time and passion you put in, and it might not go out there. And it just comes back to being willing to pivot and keep going and to accept that.
Yeah, I think for me, when I got the invite to go and see Attacking the Darkness, as a young person who loved D&D games and stuff like that, and then having like Nigerian parents who absolutely thought it was worshiping the devil, or just everything to do with rituals and Satanism and all of this stuff. I loved it. I loved it so much. And I always tell people about this film because it is so relevant, especially to those young Christian children, who want to branch off and do more stuff. But, there's just so much bad press still when it comes to gaming and everything. So, yeah.
And sometimes a concept is just too specific.
Definitely.
Yeah. What else do we have?
So this is from Anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
If you were starting to create this fandom today, how would you kick things off?
I would. Who are they? Are any of you familiar with It's a Southern Thing? It's a group. It's a Facebook page that does cute little videos, very short form, about Southern culture. Funny, tongue-in-cheek. I think they're a fantastic model because they start very small and they turn out a lot of ideas. They're not precious about their ideas. It's a challenge because we all want to be making the big things that take a ton of time. But if I were starting now, I would probably be doing 1-minute videos for TikTok, for Facebook, for other places. But I'd be doing them within the worlds and within the context of what I want to build, and using that to build to build up kind of a core audience who's into these distilled pieces of humor, these distilled pieces of kind of our values and our voice, and turning around things really quickly. Because we're all fighting that content deluge. It's only gotten worse. The algorithm, I'll offer one piece. So the more you can grow your core audience, the more control you have over the algorithm. Being able to point 500 or 1,000 people at any one action on the internet can help train the algorithm. Like when Good Omens came out, we knew that our fan base was very similar, that the Journeyquest fans would be watching it. We also knew that our Kickstarter would be launching. So our Kickstarter came out the Friday Good Omens launched. We got about 1,000 pledges on day one. This was like for season 3 or 4. And then we told them, our first update was, we know you're watching Good Omens. We are too. Watch episodes of Journeyquest on Amazon in between Good Omens. And we sent 1,000 people over there. And for the rest of the campaign, first of all, our Amazon revenue for the month tripled. Secondly, the rest of the campaign, we had people saying, yeah, I saw Journeyquest recommended on Amazon. I binged it and then went over and pledged as soon as I finished because I needed the story to continue. So finding, even if it's a very small audience, finding ways to leverage their excitement in key coordinated ways to boost the signal, to overcome all of the noise is really valuable. But you've got to boost the signal to people who want it.
Yeah. Yeah. We have another question from Yasmin.
Mhm.
Again, what was the webcomic creation process like? Were
Mhm.
fans involved as well?
Yeah, so in that case, we reached out to a guy named Aaron Williams who created a comic book called Nodwick, and we'd done a cameo years ago for Nodwick in one of our movies, and said, "Hey, do you want carte blanche to create a webcomic of Nodwick's continued adventures in the world of the gamers? Here's how much money we'll give you a month." And then he went and did it, and then we paid him. So,
He's a fan also, right? He's a fan too. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going through the process of developing a YA graphic novel right now that is considerably more in depth, but that's kind of outside the scope of this.
Yeah, and we just helped to fund and produce ElfQuest, which has been a comic for over 40 years now.
With Robert Picardo and Amber Benson and
Aaron Douglas.
Really. Abie Ekenezar.
Cree Summer.
A really fabulous cast. That was a fun one too. Working with an IP that had been around for 40 years, bringing the Zoe model to it, and then helping them leverage their fan base in a way that they didn't know how to do. We raised over $300,000 for an audio movie, which is now being produced exactly the way they want it. I just think that's super powerful.
And then we have one last question, and then we'll probably go into wrap up. Are there fan strategies that you've tried that you thought were promising and haven't worked?
Yes. Having an open debate with assholes. It doesn't work. They will just chase other people away, and it signals to marginalized fans that you're willing to debate their right to exist. That was the biggest mistake I made, and I lost a really good friend over it because I was being stupid and trying to save everyone. And sometimes you just have to let the toxic people go so you can have a healthy community.
Yep. Well, so it looks like it's about time to wrap up. I just want to say thank you again to Ben. Thank you, Stareable, for allowing us to be a part of your event this year for 2021. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today and sharing the experiences of this amazing filmmaker, writer, a creator extraordinaire. Thanks to everyone who participated and gave questions, asked questions, and just thank you for being a part of this extremely impressive community of creators. Stareable Fest is presented by Dell Technologies with NVIDIA, making workstation and monitor solutions purpose-built for creators like you. And we'll see you next time. Next session tonight at on Saturday from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern. It's the annual adrenaline-fueled 90-second pitch competition. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Have a wonderful day and a better weekend, and we'll see you next year.
Take care.